It's the Herd on ESPN Radio. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Simulcast on ESPNU. All sorts of stuff today. Jay Bill is stopping by. Drew Brees stopping by today. So, you know, if you've listened to this show, that I'm not a big believer in breaking down games. I just think that's like 1980 sports radio. I'm just not into it. I think it's boring. And you know, this show is kind of evolved. What you're interested in, you're more interested now in certain things. It used to be when I started here 10 years ago, we talked more golf and baseball. We don't talk it as much. There are certain things that I like boxing, that you don't really care about, so I can't talk about it. You know, we kind of, you know, we stay basically within the lane of what gets people talking. And there's two or three things that get people talking on this show. The NFL is absurdly popular. You know that. Just like in European countries. They've got cricket, but they want to talk football. They want to talk soccer. They don't talk cricket. You know, cricket's similar now, analogous to baseball in this country, where it's become a regional sport. Your local station will talk about it, but national guys got to stay away from it. Football plays everywhere. Baseball plays in that little cubby, that little regional or local cubby. Nobody wants to talk about the Cincinnati Reds outside of Cincinnati. That's bad for my business. It's great if you're, you know, a radio host in Cincinnati. But one of the things that plays that and we all kind of get what's popular and what's not. But one of the things that plays and gets great numbers that nobody wants to admit is all this religious, gay NFL stuff. And the minute we talk about it, everybody says, nobody cares, and my phones light up, and my emails explode. Folks, there's a reason that it explodes, because you're combining politics and religion and football. All those get ratings. All those get numbers. So this Tony Dungy story, nobody cares. Opposite is true. Our numbers in July generally plateau or erode. Tony Dungy, a lot of people read the Bible. A lot of people have an opinion. Everybody can join the discussion. Sports fans, public, religious people. I love the Tony Dungy topic. I think it's great. Makes us smarter, makes us talk. It's an open dialogue. But I think what is really interesting about the American media to me, and I don't have a ton of friends in the media, but I have some. But what I find fascinating about the media is the media asks questions, but they only want one answer. The media asks questions, but you have to give them the answer they want, or they'll be critical. I mean, that is the media. A lot of people are saying, who have actually been in locker rooms and have played in the game, yeah, Michael Sam briefly is going to be a distraction. It's not going to last forever. But there's a lot of meathead players. Antonio Pierce was on SportsCenter. He was in a locker room for 10 years in the NFL, said, yeah, for a brief time it could be a distraction.
I thought Tony Dungy did a great job because he was honest. I think most people in this situation have given the politically correct answer. And a lot of guys feel totally different in what they're saying on camera in front of reporters. So Tony Dungy was honest, and I agree. I would have to say if Michael Sam was a teammate and I was still playing and we're here in New York City and I was playing for the Giants, it would be a distraction, and I would not want to have to deal with that every day.
By the way, Michael Sam yesterday was being interviewed, and he had to cut off a reporter, I'm reading it verbatim, who continued to ask questions about being gay. So, yes, the media, a heat-seeking missile, seeking headlines, would not stop asking Michael Sam about being gay. And Michael Sam had to cut them off. That's why football coaches, and more than any coaching profession, football guys are control freaks. Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, Urban Meyer, who can't they control? The media. They try to keep the media at arm's length, but the NFL forces you to have certain meetings. And, by the way, Colin, this will not be a distraction. Really? You don't think players can be meatheads? Yesterday, David Tyree got hired by the New York Giants as the team's director of player development. He said just 3 years ago he would trade his catch in the Super Bowl if it would stop homosexuals from being married. That same year, Tyree put out a series of tweets saying there's no scientific evidence to support the claim of being born gay, and that he has met former homosexuals. Got hired by the Giants. Okay, so Tony Dungy, and yesterday clarified it again. He said, I don't believe Michael's sexual orientation will be a distraction to his teammates or his organization. I do think the media attention that comes with it will be a distraction. It already is. Michael Sam yesterday had to cut people off. The David Tyree thing is going to be a distraction. The Giants are going to take a lot of heat for that. And by the way, Mark Schlereth, players are giving us the answer. I've had 3 guys at ESPN here, smart guys, I would consider high IQ former football players, have all said, oh, yeah, you're going to have to deal with some crap. And you know what they all say? Go look at the Richie Incognito situation. Look how violent that was. The slurs, how disgusting. 50% of the players defended him. You don't think there's going to be some homophobes in the locker room? You don't think so? 50% of the players righteously supported Richie Incognito. Slurs. Violent threats. Oh, just joking. You don't think there's going to be any jokes in that locker room, Michael Sam? Really? Well, Mark Schlereth said it yesterday. Again, Tony's giving us the answer. Antonio Pierce is giving us the answer. All the football players are giving me the answer off the air. We just don't like the answer. Mark Schlereth.
When the talent outweighs the distraction, do you know what will happen in the National Football League? They'll take a chance on that supreme talent over that distraction. When those two don't mesh, when the talent doesn't outweigh the distraction, every team in the league passed up on Michael Sam. He didn't get drafted to the very end of the 7th round. That means all 32 teams passed him through 6 rounds when he was rated as a 4th to 6th to 7th round pick. So everybody feels the same way as Tony Dungy does.
Everybody off the record I talked to, all the players, they're all saying, yeah, there's meatheads in the locker room. And unfortunately, like the meatheads will go too far. Somebody will go too far. I don't think it'll last forever. I think society's evolving. But this is a great example of the players and the coaches are giving us the answer, and we don't like the answer. And they're not evolving as fast as we are. So I never, now, by the way, I do think pro athletes are smarter today. I think these fluid social situations get resolved quicker. We take the smarter side faster. I think we're a very bright country. I mean, if you go look at who we elected president, if you really go look at who we elected president, in the height of Middle East turmoil, we elected a president whose middle name is Hussein, our first African-American president. That can't be overstated. We are a smart country that ultimately chooses who we think is the best leader. You could have made an argument that in the height of the election process, I mean, if you read the internet, if you read the marginal people, if you read the people on the fringes, the fear mongers, there's no chance Barack Hussein Obama was going to get elected. And you did. You did as Americans. So we get stuff right here. We do. We always do. We are a country full of decent people. But not everybody gets everything quickly. And there's a doctrine in this country called the Bible. And it can be rigid. And people worship it. And there are verses in regards to gay Americans, which I don't agree with, but I'm not God. And many people believe that rigid doctrine, word for word, phrase for phrase, verse for verse. So I just think it's funny that we're getting the answer from a lot of players, and we just don't like the answer. But yeah, it could be initially a little bit of a distraction. Well, Jackie Robinson. This is not Jackie Robinson. Systematic violence against a race based on skin color. Not where we're at. The Herd brought to you by Mobile Super. Live from the Public House in Chicago, July 30th. Choose Mobile Super for long engine life. I think the Dungy thing is fascinating. And I like Tony. I don't always agree with Tony, but I like him. And I frankly find all these stories of this nature, these big social stories, fascinating and a gift. We should talk about them. We can break down games. We should talk about this stuff. This is great. This is how we get past stuff, how we move past stuff, how we educate people. Don't run from these Tony Dungy stories. These are a gift to our society, to our citizenry. This is exactly the kind of story we should be talking about. so we can end hate and move past the caveman era. This is why these are gifts. We shouldn't run from this stuff. Hey, let's break down the American League Central. Not interested. Hey, what's your OPB at the DMV? You know me. I don't care. All right, Doc Rivers. Sterling's out, right? Everybody knows that, right? Doc Rivers said I won't coach until he's officially out, so he's going to wait on the court system? Really? Doc, really? If you don't have a will, the court may dictate what happens to your property or your minor children. Don't let it happen. National Make-A-Will Month right now. Call or visit LegalZoom. Special pricing on wills and living trusts. They've been helping people for over 13 years. It's painless. You get the legal help quickly you need. And don't forget to enter my name, Colin, in the referral box at checkout. LegalZoom provides legal help through independent attorneys and self-help, but they're not a law firm. Protect your fam and your future at LegalZoom.com. Special pricing. It is National Make-A-Will Month. We span the globe next. Now, never forget, until recently, the military was not allowed by law to have openly gay members. It wasn't that long ago. So, we are in a transition period with a lot of social issues in America. Everybody wants, it moves at a different tempo and pace. People evolve differently. But I do think it's interesting. In the media, we ask a lot of questions, and if we don't get the answer we like, then we point fingers. You're dumb. You're slow. You're intolerant. You're racist. You're bigoted. Things take time. Our Congress would not allow openly gay members in the military until they passed that law. I mean, Bill Clinton presidency. This was a huge topic. And you wouldn't want to call it a distraction, but it was a huge topic while there were other crises in the country. It has been a major topic with our current president, who is evolving on gay marriage. 30 states disallow it. They'll eventually, mostly outside of the South, allow it. So, but I think it's fascinating. Let's span the globe.
We do it every day at this time. We call it our daily sports page.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sports.
Spanning the globe. St. Louis.
Well, at the heart of the Michael Sam story is Nick Wagner, who covers the Rams for ESPN NFL. When Tony Dungy says something, Michael Sam's got to answer it. Camp is opening now for you, Nick. How many people were at camp yesterday compared to, your average year covering the Rams?
They just got started with rookies yesterday, so they officially start training camp coming up here on Friday with veterans mixed in. Jeff Fisher likes to get the rookies a couple days to get acclimated before kind of throwing them into the fire. So I do expect a bigger contingent than what we've seen in years past for any number of reasons, not least of which includes Michael Sam.
Is he going to make the team?
Colin, I think there's a better chance than maybe people realize, and I'm not saying it's a sure thing by any means. I think it's an uphill climb for him, but the Rams have, in each of the 2 years under Jeff Fisher and Les Snead, kept 9 defensive linemen. As you look at the roster right now, there's pretty much 8 spots that are accounted for, and that 9th spot is the one that he's going to be competing for. So, and the guys that he's going to be battling are guys that are undrafted rookies and guys still trying to kind of find their way as well. So the key for him, I think, when it comes down to it, Colin, is just going to be, can he contribute on special teams? He's lost 13 pounds to try to get faster so that he can cover and run down kicks. If he can do that, I think he's got a realistic shot.
Good stuff, Nick. Thanks, man.
You got to take care.
Chicago.
Now the Bulls have interest in acquiring Kevin Love. Aren't they running out of cap space? How many good players can Chicago have? Brian Windhorst covers the NBA. What would the Bulls... We know the Cavs would give up, like Andrew Wiggins and maybe a future number 1 and, a role player. What would the Bulls give to get Kevin Love, Brian?
Colin, they're not running out of cap space. They're out of cap space. Most people in the league think that this is about on the 1-yard line, now that we're almost in football season, that Kevin Love is going to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. You better get it in your head. You're going to start seeing Kevin Love playing with LeBron James, which is a dream scenario for LeBron. I don't think there's a player that fits better with him from a talent standpoint, or from a tool standpoint in the league. What you're getting here is there's a couple of things going on. The Wolves are playing poker. They are trying to exact as much as they possibly can out of the Cavs, which means not just Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett and a future number one, but they want the Cavaliers to take on some bad salary, Kevin Martin and or J.J. Barea, and the Cavs are willing to do it. And what does this have to do with the Bulls? Well, the Wolves definitely talked to the Bulls over the last couple of days, but I really think it's just a diversionary tactic to get the Cavs willing to give more in the trade, and the Cavs made a minor deal yesterday, and they gave up a lot to do it. They got 3 players from Utah with non-guaranteed contracts, and they paid a player $1.3 million and a draft pick to do it. And the reason they did that deal was to help facilitate this love thing down the line. This is where it's headed. You never know. If the Warriors change their stance and throw Klay Thompson in, maybe that could get Minnesota to backtrack, but this is all full steam ahead. Kevin Love headed to Cleveland.
Ryan Windhorst, thanks, bud.
Thanks, Colin.
Los Angeles.
So if Donald Sterling stays, Doc Rivers says he'll go. Arash Markazi, ESPNLA.com, cover the Clippers. All right, first of all, when's the Clippers sale to Steve Ballmer? Arash, when's it official? Like, when's this thing going to be done? Cross the T's, dot the I's, done, and Steve Ballmer owns it?
So we have a trial that's currently ongoing that should be settled sometime by the end of July. But Donald Sterling, as he's prone to do, filed another lawsuit. That being said, there is no scenario where Donald Sterling will run the team at the beginning of the season. Worst case scenario, the league takes control of the team sometime in September and then sells the team at that point.
Is Doc grandstanding? This is all but done, right? Despite the lawsuit yesterday, Steve Ballmer's going to own the team here in about 3 months, 2 months, right?
Yeah, Dick Parsons testified, and this is the reason he testified. He wanted to prove to the judge, listen, if you don't let this sale go through, Doc will leave, players will leave, sponsors will leave. So he wanted to paint the picture that said, listen, judge, you have to approve this sale or the team will crumble.
Okay, Arash, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No problem.
That was Spanning the Globe.
To bring you the constant variety of sports.
The Herd on ESPN Radio.
This is a part of the year where we kind of segue from NBA free agency, and it's a little baseball talk, but increasingly we get right into football. And we have, like, SEC coaches coming in. Today is Big 12 coaches. I think Friday's Pac-12 coaches. You know, they come through. They parade through the car wash. I always put Saban on, Steve Spurrier, Bob Stoops. I'll have a couple Pac-12 guys. You know, some of the bigger name guys I have relationships with through the years. But I got a complaint yesterday about us and about ESPN, and it is just absurd. We deserve shots, but this one is just dumb. And I'll address it next, The Herd.
All guests on The Herd appear via the Subway Fresh Take.
I'm obviously just a sports guy, not a historian, but I because Tony Dungy is an African-American and he has been, his religious doctrine, his beliefs are fairly strident. And maybe strident is an opinion. I shouldn't say strident. He just got strong religious beliefs. That a lot of people are saying, well, race, he should know because he's black and he's been discriminated against. I personally, I don't think all exclusions are equal. I think if you look at the history of how we have treated blacks and gays, I think they're not analogous. I think Jackie Robinson was a transcendent, once-in-a-generation talent who, because the color of his skin, was not allowed to play. People in America were getting killed for his skin color. People in America, law enforcement was often part of the systematic violence against blacks. They were not allowed in schools, public areas, signage, can't drink here, can't eat here, can't. Go listen to what Bill Russell went through in the 60s. Go look at the South and Alabama and the issues with universities and schooling and segregation. I'm not saying there haven't been hate crimes against gay Americans, and I am also about as pro-gay as any sports radio host in the country. I have always, universally, absolutely, definitively been. In fact, I get nasty emails this morning calling me names because I have always been on the side of accepting everybody, regardless of religion, skin, being gay. Who cares? But I don't think they're analogous. I think you look at the history of the violence against a race is systematic in law enforcement. Was darker, deeper, more sinister, more violent than what gay Americans have endured. Now, there has been bigotry, and there is closed-mindedness, and there is intolerance, but gays weren't owned, disallowed in common public areas. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it's all equal. But I notice the media often lumping everything into the same category. And I think it's a disservice to African Americans and the history, the repulsive history of the country. That's my opinion. That and so the immediate reaction by most media is Tony Dungy should know better. Well, we all should know better, and we're all prone to mistakes and hypocrisy. But now maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe it's all the same. But I was kind of raised to believe that was the darkest moment in American history. Slavery, racism. That is, now, again, not saying what gays have gone through isn't bad, isn't intolerant, there's not some bigotry. But the media is very comfortable always connecting the two, always. One's analogous to the other. Maybe I have to evolve on that. The lens in which I see how blacks were treated 50 years ago, maybe it's because I've grown up on the coast, which has been more tolerant. You know, I don't know. Maybe my lens is not broad enough on that. That's how I see it. I got this email yesterday, and I don't even know why I cover this stuff. I don't even know why I respond to this stuff. It's silly. But I always feel like I have to. And I don't make the programming decisions for this network. I make them for this show. We talk about what I feel like talking about. All I control is this show. I don't control the network. But I get this all the time. Here's Wes. Yeah, it's pretty clear ESPN has a bias toward the SEC. When it's SEC Media Day, ESPN runs a continuous loop of coverage throughout the whole day. Every other conference is just college football media days, which sounds discounted. I get it. They're a cash cow. I just think as an objective sports news source, they should be less biased in their reporting. Well, then why don't you beat them occasionally? Why in the world should we cover everything equally when teams aren't equal, conferences aren't equal, players aren't equal? Go watch the Weather Channel. They don't cover San Diego that much because the weather never changes. You know what they cover? Tornado Alley, constantly. Why should the coverage for weather be the same? Why should the coverage on Fox News be the same? There are certain people that are polarizing that more people are interested in. We're not .orgs. The SEC is a better conference. It's been proven. Last year, I mean, ever noticed who ESPN gets criticized for covering too much? LeBron, Rory McIlroy this weekend, the NFL, Tiger for 10 years, the SEC. They're all kicking your arse. So stop whining about it. The SEC championship's on CBS. It's not on our network. It's on CBS. Some years it gets a 12. That's like a double a World Series game, which says that you as the audience are acknowledging, yeah, those guys down there, they play better football. So, you know, when I laugh at this, of the 254 guys drafted last year, 63 came from SEC schools. That's double the number of draft picks from any other college or division or league. So, of course, we cover it more. I'm looking at the bowl records all time for teams. 10 teams in the SEC have winning bowl records. There's only 3 that don't, and 2 of those just transferred from another conference, Texas A&M and Missouri. And they'll have better bowl records in 10 years because they'll get better players because they play in the South and the SEC, and they'll recruit better players. So beat them. I hear that all the time. It's not bias. We cover more interesting, better stuff. I was listening yesterday to New York radio, and somebody's complaining. Oh, they weren't complaining about ESPN. They're like, oh, I can't believe you're just jamming Rory McIlroy down our throat. He's won 3 majors. He's like 26. Who are you going to cover? Who is more interesting than Rory McIlroy this weekend? Of course you cover him. Of course we did. Of course CBS. Of course NBC. By the way, the Tony Dungy topic's a topic on every network. We just happen to be the biggest one. But watch the Weather Channel. They don't cover things equally. Tornado Alley is always a topic. Flood zones are always a topic. They don't cover San Diego much. It's 77 there today. It's 77 there yesterday. They don't have equal coverage because the regions aren't equal. Some get tornadoes, some get flooding, some don't. Chicago gets a lot of coverage on the news channel. It's cold there. Their winters are harsh. They get big storms. There's a lot of delays at O'Hare Airport. The Weather Channel is very big with travelers. Atlanta gets a lot of coverage on the Weather Channel. They have big storms, lightning storms. They have a busy airport. The Weather Channel's huge in American airports. You know, airline hubs get more coverage on the Weather Channel. Chicago does. New York does. Atlanta does. They get more coverage on the Weather Channel because the Weather Channel is significantly popular. Minneapolis, in American airports. Yeah, the SEC is better than everybody. Move on. Get over it. Yeah, we cover them. Their football coaches, their assistants make $1.5 million. That's more than some conferences' head coaches. Why? Because it's popular. The revenue machine. Yeah. Why do I waste time even doing this? Like once a month, I have to go out and just like defend why we cover great teams. Should I just stop? Maybe I just go off email for a day. Like you cover Tim Tebow. The Tim Tebow stories, I'll never forget this. When he was in Denver, it was ridiculous. He was getting 50% higher clicks than even the New York Giants, the Patriots, the Steelers, the Cowboys. We weren't doing it. You were clicking it. We wouldn't even put his story up front. It wouldn't matter. When he went on that 6-game winning streak, like he would have 13 million downloads. Great teams would have $1.5 million. What are we supposed to do? Highest ratings I ever got at this company were during the Denver Tim Tebow 6-game winning streak. My sister cared about football. God. 1-888-SAY ESPN. The phone number, the Herd on ESPN Radio. It is funny all the time. I about the SEC stuff. I was just talking to Kirk Herbstreit, and I'm not going to divulge everything we talked about. But remember, we don't own the SEC contract of note. CBS does. So when we cover the SEC, all we're doing is helping CBS, our rival. So when we talk about we just got into the SEC business, the SEC network. We didn't get into it 10 years ago because the ratings weren't huge 10 years ago. They're huge now. And that now was built largely by CBS. CBS has owned the SEC for years. Every time we cover the SEC, we give CBS ratings. But it's just, it's not our fault. Michigan stinks. We would love Michigan to be relevant. They're not. We would love that. You want to know who this network is dying to be great? USC, because they're in Los Angeles. We even own their radio rights out in Los Angeles. We bought their radio rights. We are dying for USC to go 12-0 because they move the needle. It's not our fault. They had the Lane Kiffin era, the Pete Carroll stuff. It's not our fault. We were rooting for it. Yeah, there's certain places. If you want to know who we're rooting for, I think deep down the Miami Hurricanes. Flashy, flamboyant, controversial, big market or bigger market. If you really want to know who we're rooting for, I think USC and Miami, they're in bigger cities. They're flashy programs. It's not our fault they've both been down for a while. Why would we root for small southern towns that are carried mostly on another network? CBS. Okay? And we all want Notre Dame, but NBC owns them. So if we talk Notre Dame, we push into NBC. NBC owns Notre Dame. CBS owns the SEC. We're killing ourselves here. We don't own the NBC rights. We don't. But yeah, all we talk about is Notre Dame. So I saw this story. I don't know, just a random story. Jay Paterno is filing a lawsuit against Penn State for $1 million because he can't get a job due to the Sandusky scandal. Love the show, Dave. Here's what's really interesting. is that Jay Paterno chose to be his dad's assistant. He didn't want to create his own legacy. He didn't want to move away from Pa. He didn't want to form his own identity. Therefore now, yes, he is stigmatized due to the controversy that engulfed his father. I've known guys whose dads own a business, and it's profitable, but they want to create their own legacy. My dad wanted me to take over his optometry business, and I'm like, I don't like it. I want to do my own stuff. I don't want to live in my hometown. He wanted me to. I mean, he talked about it. He wanted me to take over his business, and I didn't want to. I wanted to create, and it wasn't obviously Penn State football, but I've had friends whose fathers move them into a business. And after about 2 years, they're like, yeah, but I'm basically working for you. I want to create my own legacy. Jay Paterno could have taken other jobs. He could have taken other jobs. Jay Paterno wanted to be with his dad. He chose that. It would have been harder leaving his father. He could have been fired. It's easier coaching when you know you're not going to get fired. Mom's not going to let that happen. But that's a great example of Jay Paterno chose the easier, safer, I'll do it with dad route, and you pay the price. So I think that's a decision all sorts of men and women battle with, struggle with today. You know, we don't know what Bernie Madoff's kids knew, but they get lumped in with dad because of Bernie Madoff. If they'd broken away, been attorneys, owned firms, had nothing to do with dad, be different. But that's a decision people make. Jay Paterno chose to make less but stay close to dad. That's called loyalty. Loyalty can burn you. So we make choices in life, and he's calling it improper termination. And he says Penn State's engaging in civil conspiracy against him. And I wish him luck. And I like Jay. He made a choice. He made a choice to stay on that staff. By the way, a lot of people stayed on that Penn State staff and didn't make nearly the money they could have at other schools because they chose kind of that, lifestyle, the small town, loyal. All right. Well, the downside of that is when controversy breaks and you've stayed at one place for 48 years and have not been mobile, people don't look at you as a viable climbing the ladder candidate. Nick Saban's moved all around the country. NFL failed, an NFL assistant, Michigan State, LSU. He's been mobile. He's been in a lot of places. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Test drive snapshot. See how much you could save. Progressive.com/snapshot. Made our NFL predictions yesterday. And we did it in the second hour. So some of our affiliates who only get our first hour did not hear it. Many think I'm too optimistic on the Bears and the Jets, but my theory's always been, do you do something exceptional? I think the Bears offense is exceptional, and I think the Jets defense is exceptional. You don't have to be well-rounded. The New York Giants have won Super Bowls with a bad secondary. The New York Giants have won Super Bowls with an average running game. The New England Patriots have gotten to Super Bowls and have gotten to AFC championships with an injury-depleted team with no pass rush. With salary cap restrictions, you do not have to be perfect. You can have holes. But are you great at something? I have the Eagles winning the NFC East at 11-5. I've got the Packers and Bears both going 10-6. I love the way Chicago's schedule ends. Really, really, really in their favor. I have the Saints winning the South at 10-6, and the Niners winning the West at 11-5, but Seattle makes the playoffs at 10-6. So the Bears and the Seahawks are wild card teams. In the East, AFC East, Patriots 11-5. Jets don't make the playoffs at 9-7. The AFC North, the Ravens win it at 10-6. Bengals make the playoffs at 9-7. The Colts win the South 12-4, best record in the National Football League. And the Broncos win the West 11-5. I like San Diego, but I hate how their season ends in December. Brutal schedule for San Diego. Now, do I think these are the best 12 teams in the NFL? No, I like San Diego's personnel better than the Jets. But I like the Jets' easy schedule late, and I don't like San Diego's schedule late. So this is not just the 12 best teams. It is based on schedules and divisions. I don't think the Colts are the best team in the league, but they could go 6-0 in division games. I think Seattle's got significantly better players in key positions than the Colts. But they got to play the Cardinals twice, the Rams twice, and the Niners twice. The Colts get the Texans, Jags, and Titans twice. So you can go to ESPNradio.com, the Herd webpage. We'll have it. Our NFL predictions feel pretty good. I think I'm a little optimistic perhaps on the Bears and Jets. People say I'm too tough on the Lions, who I put at 6-10, and the Cowboys 5-11. I think Tony Romo, off surgery, has been basically super glue to the franchise, holding it together. And I think he may get banged up, and they will spiral out of control. I've generally had them at 8-8 through the years, not this year. I think they erode into a mess. It's the Herd. Oh, it's the Herd on ESPN Radio. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Simulcast on ESPNU. Bob Kravitz in about 5 minutes. Drew Brees, Jay Billis. By the way, I saw this. There's all sorts of studies. The laziest states in America, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, released its annual report on the physical activity of adults in each state. And these are the states that don't move much. Mississippi, Tennessee, West Virginia, Alabama, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Indiana, Missouri, Kentucky, a lot of southern states. By the way, New Jersey didn't do great, either did New York. Is it possible that states are lazier and more dormant because the weather is oppressive? Ever been to the South, June through September? It's hard to go outside. You ever been to New Jersey, Christmas until April? It's lousy outside. For the states lazy, where's the weather keep you indoors? You'll notice there's no states with moderate temperatures on that list because you can always go outdoors in San Diego. It's nice out. Seriously, I'm amazed the Atlanta Braves can get any fans to go to their games. You ever been outside in Atlanta in the summer? It's gross. I mean, it's oppressive. That's amazing to me that a southern team in the summer. You ever been to Houston in the summer? The fact the Astros draw 9 people a night is amazing to me. When you're in the South in the summer, blinking will make you sweat. You'd be like, blinking, I got to sit down. Oh, I am sweating from all this blinking. You get exhausted from just thinking. Like, I was too deep on that topic. I got to sit down. I am exhausted. So everybody's saying that's a lazy estate. It's all states with oppressive humidity and really bad winters. It seems like to me. Bob Kravitz has been a columnist, covered Tony Dungy. Also want to get to the Lance Stevenson issue. Brought him on the show. For years I couldn't because he worked at a company that I couldn't bring him on. So now he doesn't. So Bob Kravitz joining us in the Herd on ESPN Radio, longtime columnist, Indianapolis Star. You covered Tony. He's basically saying, Tony Dungy, it's not the gay thing, it's the distraction thing, Bob. You know Tony and his background like you do. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I could buy that if Tony had not made the case for Michael Vick to be re-signed after the dog fighting situation where, Michael Vick was the ultimate distraction, or where he was quoted as saying that God has a place for Tim Tebow in the NFL. Tim Tebow is certainly a massive distraction. And quite honestly, and I say this having not been in St. Louis, so I'm a little bit, distant from the reality of it. But I really think the distraction piece is overstated. Did they ask him about the gay thing the other day? Yeah, sure they did, because Tony Dungy brought it up. But I honestly think in this day and age, the gay situation is a 2 to 3 day story. It was a big deal at the Combine. I'm sure it's going to be a big deal the first day of training camp. But then I think it goes away. Then I think he becomes another football player. So I really think the whole distraction thing is overstated. And let's face it, football players are great at compartmentalizing. And, you want to talk about distractions. When Tony Dungy was in Tampa, they drafted Warren Sapp, who had failed a couple of drug tests. So, I don't know that this is as big of a deal as we're making it out to be, at least from a media standpoint.
How much, Dungy, how much do you think his personal beliefs come into play here?
I think it's entirely his personal beliefs. I mean, he is, I respect his right to have those beliefs, certainly, but he has been very outspoken about the gay marriage ban here in Indiana. I know, because of his biblical beliefs that he, believes that homosexuality is a sin against God and all that kind of thing. So I really think the subtext to all of this is a lifestyle that he does not approve of. And so I think he's applying a completely different set of circumstances to this than he may have for a guy who was involved in a dogfighting ring or a guy like Tim Tebow, who, by the way, can't play a lick.
One of the things I said yesterday is Michael Vick was an incarceration issue, and the NFL's been dealing with that forever. It's easier to deal with things when you've dealt with them before, whether it's with your kids or as a head coach in the NFL with incarceration. Couldn't I make the argument that at least initially that this gay player publicly kissing TV during the draft, machismo issue, this has been something the military has struggled with. It's something our president until 2009 hadn't evolved on, and that we're expecting 21-year-old men to like you and I in the media, older people, to evolve rather quickly, and they're just not capable of it as quickly as other people are.
I think, again, we're not giving modern NFL players enough credit. Look, there are cretins in the NFL, there are cretins in my business, there are cretins in your business. But I think, by and large, we've reached a place in our society where I would say most of these players, it's not even an issue for them. I mean, I look at my kids, and, I just think it's a different generation. I think your generation, my generation, I'm a bit older than you. Yeah, it's a bigger deal for us. It's certainly a big deal for people with very strict biblical beliefs. But I don't think it would end up being a big distraction in that locker room. And, clearly the St. Louis Rams felt like it wouldn't be. And I think they're right. I think, look, you've got to take a little bit of a risk to move social progress. And, I'm not comparing Michael Sam to Jackie Robinson, believe me, but, if Branch Rickey was worried about blowback and distractions, he never would have signed Jackie Robinson. Same thing with Al Davis and Art Shell. So I think somebody's got to be first. And so I was just disappointed, but not terribly surprised by what Tony had to say.
I want to segue to the Lance Stevenson issue because the Pacers gave him an excellent offer, and it's a tremendous organization and roster, and he skips town. And I said, did he not like the city? Did he not feel comfortable? Did he not like the locker room? It made no financial sense. So, Bob, you're in the heart of this story as a columnist for the Indianapolis Star. Why did Lance Stevenson take less money and go to a bad team?
I think that he was hijacked by an agent who is not really an agent. He's a litigator and a smart man by every in every sense, but he's a guy who only represents one other player besides Lance Stevenson. So I think he got amateurish advice. And from what I'm told, his father got very involved. And I think once they found out that the Pacers were not going to offer $55 to $57 million, I think their feelings were hurt. It was a kick in the gut to them. So I think they were just willing to take whatever decent offer was out there. And that happened to be the Charlotte Hornets. I think it makes no sense, especially the third year being a player option, so that if he blows up and has a great couple of years, Michael Jordan doesn't have to do a thing for him. And if he blows up in the wrong way, in a bad Lance sort of way, they don't have to keep him. So I just don't understand why you would turn down, 5 years of guaranteed money with an organization that has supported you completely through all your, mishaps, and you have a guy like Larry Bird who's firmly in your corner.
Bob Kravitz, columnist, Indianapolis Star. Couple of Indiana issues. Good talking to you, Bob.
Good talking to you, Colin.
The Tony Dungy thing today, one of the guys that I like to watch on television is Bill Maher. And, he's a left-leaning guy, but I listen to Bill O'Reilly, and he's a right-leaning guy. So I've read Ann Coulter, and I have watched MSNBC. I just like information. But what I have said about Tony Dungy, not that I am righteously defending him, but everybody in the NFL passed on Michael Sam 7 times. Rams passed on him 6 times. That there is a concern about how will our locker rooms handle this. And I think sometimes the media is being righteous and idealistic. And I thought Bill Maher said it best. Remember when Don Jones, the Miami Dolphin player, young kid, came out with the anti-gay tweet, which was incredibly immature? Bill Maher said this, and this is about Michael Sam, and this is what I have been saying for a week. I am not in any way, as the most pro-gay talk show host in this sports culture we have. Jim Rome's always been good about that. I don't listen to all the shows, but I would say if you listen to historically Rome, he's been pretty smart and accepting. I think we are. I think the shows before us are. I don't listen to all the shows, but there are certain shows where I think we're one of those, accepting. Bill Maher is the ultimate left-leaning progressive. And when Don Jones came out and tweeted, OMG, horrible, when he saw Sam kiss his boyfriend, here's what Bill Maher said. And this is what I've said. Quote, folks, we had a televised, celebrated interracial gay kiss during the draft. The culture war is over. We won. Which is why it's so unnecessary for so many to type what a jerk Don Jones was. Give the kid a minute to get enlightened. He's 24. Think how stupid you were at 24. Okay, now add football. He went on to say, a few weeks ago, the CEO of Mozilla was forced to resign because it was revealed that in 2008 he supported Proposition 8, California's ban on gay marriage. A bad law, yes, but 52% of Californians supported it. Do they all have to resign? Obama was against gay marriage in 2008. Does he have to resign? Hillary came around just last year. Can she be president? You can't purge everybody who doesn't evolve exactly on the timetable you did. And when teams passed on Michael Sam, and I understand that, I'm not anti-gay, I'm pro-understanding the fear and the growth process is different in a male-only, machismo, young. Think about the NFL locker rooms. All male, all young, all geared toward violence. Let's give them a second here to catch up. Nobody's anti-gay. This is going to be a process. I think it'll be a rather quick process. I think halfway through the season, by the beginning of the season through camp, maybe over. But not everybody is as enlightened immediately. Let's just, instead of firing shots at everybody, take a deep breath and realize our federal government, military, corporations, states are dealing with this issue too. It doesn't mean they're anti-gay. Barbecue fans, get the Subway $6 foot-long special, the barbecue oven roasted chicken melt, Subway Eat Fresh. Here's another dumb study. Sometimes we do studies in this country. What's the point? Here's another one, and it affects every single listener I have. If you don't have a will, the court could dictate what happens to your property and your kids. Yeah, they could, your minor children. Don't let that happen. It's National Make-A-Will Month. Call or visit LegalZoom.com today for special pricing on wills and living trusts. They've been helping people for 13 years. It's painless. LegalZoom.com. Protect your family and future today. They're not a law firm, but they can connect you through independent attorneys. It's National Make-A-Will Month. Call or visit LegalZoom.com today and enter Colin in the referral box at checkout to save more. It's the Herd. You can take 1-888-SAY ESPN. If you want to ask me about my NFL predictions, you can. I've got the Eagles, Packers, Bears, Saints, Niners, Seahawks. Some would say playing it safe. I do have the Falcons having a huge bounce-back year and the Panthers sliding backwards. I think the Cowboys are going to be a mess, and the Lions will massively underachieve. So I went and looked at the Vegas odds and futures in Las Vegas after I made my predictions, not before. And I like the Jets 2 more games than Vegas. I like the Bears for 2 more wins than Vegas. But Vegas likes the Lions and the Cowboys for 2 or 3 more wins than I do. Generally, we're fairly close. I think the Colts will be the best record in the NFL, although I don't think they're the best team. But right now, the AFC South in a quarterback league, Chad Henne, Jake Locker, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andrew Luck, they're just going to win a lot of games. Celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, or just because. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Special deals on flowers and gifts starting at $29.99. Steve, you're in the herd. Steve, thanks for calling my show, and you go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Colin, I just want to say I agree with you that, all exclusions aren't the same, but there are some notable similarities in regard to race and same-sex laws. Like if you look at Booker T. Washington and the Tuskegee Institute, he was able to get people to assimilate through service labor, but, not everybody agreed, and historically he's been kind of viewed as an Uncle Tom. And then you have Bill Clinton, don't ask, don't tell. He didn't please everybody, but at the same time, he was able to get people to, evolve, and sometimes people just evolve at different speeds.
Well, by the way, progress is clunky. Always is. Always has been. People are creatures of habits. We fear change. And that's the reality of maybe men more than women. They say women enjoy the journey, men are more about the destination, and if anything gets in the way of the destination, men can struggle with it. I have no problem saying this, and I've said it before. I'm a financial moderate. I am a social liberal. And that's how I am. I'm liberal. I'm pro-gay marriage. I'm pro, basically down the line, even pot legalization, although I think it should start at a later age, post 23. But I have no problem acknowledging that. I have no problem acknowledging I'm agnostic. I've always been up front with that stuff. And I think this Michael Sam situation is great for radio and great to discuss. But I think we too easily can take comments and lump people in the media as the heat-seeking missile we are in the media looking for headlines and outrageous comments. I think this Michael Sam situation, as Mark Schlereth and Antonio Pierce said yesterday on SportsCenter, the reality is it's going to take a days, weeks here. Some players are not going to evolve as quickly as others, and there were teams that passed on Michael Sam absolutely unequivocally because they saw him as a distraction. They just don't want to be quoted on it. So to think that Tony Dungy is the only person in the NFL that thinks this way is laughable. 32 teams passed 6 times, 7 times. Rams passed once less than everybody else. For a guy that was thought of as a 3rd and a 4th round pick who was the SEC co-defensive player of the year. So we can beat up Tony Dungy for saying, yes, I think the media distraction part of it will scare some people. But a lot of other people thought that. Mark Schlereth said this yesterday. Players are coming out and saying, yeah, I think it could be a distraction. And we're clobbering Dungy for largely saying the same thing.
When the talent outweighs the distraction, do you know what will happen in the National Football League? They'll take a chance on that supreme talent over that distraction. When those two don't mesh, when the talent doesn't outweigh the distraction, every team in the league passed up on Michael Sam. He didn't get drafted to the very end of the 7th round. That means all 32 teams passed him through 6 rounds when he was rated as a 4th to 6th to 7th round pick. So everybody feels the same way as Tony Dungy does.
Now, they're wrong. They shouldn't. But this is a league where 50% of players supported Richie Incognito. It's a league where the New York Giants just hired a player that 3 years ago, David Tyree, had anti-gay slurs and anti-gay opinions. I shouldn't say slurs, although the wording he used is not up to our corporate standards. So, yes, it's going to be bumpy, and some teams were concerned about the bumps. That's all we're saying. I don't think that rises to intolerance. I think that rises to the reality of an industry of all-male young men who are not very evolved, sadly, in some social cases, and say inappropriate things. We'll have Drew Brees on later this hour. Listen, locker rooms are uncomfortable. I've walked out of locker rooms before. Now, I don't go to locker rooms anymore. I'm going to tell you something. I was in a Major League Baseball locker room about 6 years ago. I walked out. Not appropriate. From the volume of the music to the language, I mean, locker rooms are not ESPN. They're not Vanity Fair. They're not Google's headquarters. I mean, they are inappropriate. And those coaches and those players know what's said. They are ugly places where the teasing, to me, is uncomfortable. I mean, I've been in NFL locker rooms. It's uncomfortable. Like, I don't like being in there. The language, I don't love. The volume, I don't love. I think the ribbon goes over the line. Players don't. So I was completely uncomfortable with Richie Incognito. 50% of the players weren't. And Michael Sam's walking into that. And coaches know that. And players know that. And somebody will go over the line. Absolutely. I mean, I'm telling you, you put somebody in a locker room that's never been there, I think most of you would be appalled. But I'm not here to judge it. It's not my workspace. It's not my workplace. It's not my responsibility. Coming up next, what will the Saints locker room be like? I'll ask Drew Brees. What about these social situations and the speed in which players need to grow up fast and be more tolerant today? Drew Brees, next in the Herd on ESPN Radio. I was just reading a story on the domestic box office is down 20%. Nobody's watching any of these movies. And there was a movie with Cameron Diaz called Sex Tape, and nobody watched it. And no movie has grossed $300 million. Laments one studio executive. I wish I worked at Netflix. That's in the Hollywood Reporter. You know, it's really sad is that the kind of movies I like, they don't make anymore. And not enough people want to go watch them. And if you don't make $300 million, nobody wants to listen to your pitch. You know, I mean, I say one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, Sideways, the wine movie. I thought it was outrageously funny. But, you know, if you don't make $300 million and have the White House blowing up and like, I mean, literally, we've had like 7 movies about that. I mean, goblins, ghosts, the government's in peril, here come the aliens, superheroes. I mean, our company makes them. It's like that's what movies are. You just can't make a movie now and pitch it about a really fascinating story unless there's an alien coming to knock down the Congress or shoot missiles at our government. It just doesn't sell. And I have no interest watching all that stuff. It's just all that fiction. You know, how many movies can come out that the world's going to end? Yes, eventually it will. We'll get knocked off by a big star comes streaming down. Do we need to make a movie about it like every week? Can't you just tell stories about interesting people communicating? I'm like one of 9 people that wants to watch that movie. That's why I don't go to the movies anymore. I mean, you know what I go to now? I take my kids to movies that this company makes, Disney, because I know they're safe. That's about it. That's about it. That's what I go to. Because you can't get the other movies made. You know what else I watch? Independent films. On demand. You can't get those in a movie theater. No theater's going to put those movies in. I'm just not into time travel or aliens or time-traveling aliens. I'm not into it. Black hole, countries disappearing, planetary visits. From Comfort, Texas with Wrangler, Drew Brees joining us in the Herd on ESPN Radio. All right, Drew, this is going to be your 14th year in the NFL. We've got a new CBA, collective bargaining, can't practice as long, can't practice as much, not as much hitting. Drew, do camps feel any different today than when you broke into the league?
Yeah, they do, but I think it's a mentality. I think you go to camp with the mentality that, you know what, this is going to be all about football. And so you replace maybe what you did on the field, you replace the hitting more so with classroom work, studying film, studying the playbook. So at the end of the day, you want to keep guys as healthy as possible, and you want to make sure that they can get to game day 100% ready to roll and certainly prepared. And so I think we've all adjusted, but listen, it's better for the health and safety of our players, and that's what's most important.
You know, Drew, you are going to do very well post-football. It's obvious. You're a smart guy. You're respected. not only in your community but nationally. And we live in a different time, Drew. You've lived out west. Some parts of the country are more progressive, less progressive. Michael Sam, Tony Dungy comments, controversies. Are locker rooms, is there less caveman stuff in locker rooms today, or are we in the media unrealistic that in a violent game, you're always going to have some inappropriate thoughts and comments in locker rooms with these fluid social situations like Michael Sam?
Being in the locker room, it's like it's a brotherhood. It's a fraternity. It's a club. It's and it's just like you would. And really, we use the term family and that kind of thing. But, listen, you go through a lot of trials and tribulations together at times. So it is like a brotherhood. And you'll fight with those guys like brothers. You'll love them like brothers. And so you're constantly. It's hard to explain what a locker room is like, but guys are always jabbing on each other. Guys are always joking around, practical jokes, this and that, and sometimes it goes too far, yeah. But I think we all have enough respect for each other that guys come from all different walks of life. But at the end of the day, if you're there with the intent to help that team win a championship, be the best they can be, and you're all in, then it doesn't matter where you came from, what you believe, whatever. At the end of the day, can you help us win football games?
Drew, what drives you to this day? There's a lot of guys that make the money and they just flip the switch, and it's sleeping in a little later. It's not putting in the work. Deep down, not to be Dr. Phil, but what drives you to grind again this year?
Well, I love the game of football, and I want to be great at it. I want to win championships. I want to create a legacy, something that my kids can be proud of, those that come after me can be proud of. Leave the game better than I found it. I just know there's always another challenge. There's always another challenge, and that's what keeps me going, is that each and every year you understand that you're going to have to work a little bit harder to, be at the top or get to the top, and that's what drives me.
Yeah. Now, I don't imagine there'll be any resentment with Jimmy Graham, which was a really tough situation, and I thought the Saints were in a tough situation. Can Jimmy put all that stuff behind him where he would have been paid more? Can he just put that in the rearview mirror now and go play, knowing that he's probably underpaid for his value in this league?
Yeah, I think you can absolutely put it behind him. At the end of the day, they both agreed to a deal, and I think they're both happy with that deal. I'm happy to have Jimmy back, knowing that it's long-term and not just under a one-year deal. What he's done over the last 4 years has been pretty remarkable, especially his journey, where he came from. So I'm happy for Jimmy. I'm happy for our team. And I'm just looking forward to getting back to work with him.
I looked at your schedule this morning, Drew, and last year we got 6 of 8 division winners. I have you guys winning the division again at 10-6. I just love obsessing over schedules. Do you look at your schedule?
Obviously you have it, but when it comes out, do you do like I do, or like maybe you did as a kid where you go W L W W W?
No, we did that in high school. We don't do that at this level, because anything can happen on any given Sunday, no matter if you're the top dog or the underdog. You got to grind it out each and every week. And, the scenarios each week kind of change. Are you kind of hitting your stride at some point when you meet a team? Are you battling through some injuries when you play this team? Is this game prime time? Is it not? You've got a ton of different factors and variables as the season goes along. But bottom line is, and it is 1 week at a time. You don't take anything for granted. And, we got to roll it. I'm excited the training camp started today.
Drew Brees, thanks, buddy. Good talking to you. Good luck and stay healthy.
All right, man. See you, Colin.
Comfort, Texas with Wrangler. By the way, Tony Dungy talked to Dan Patrick today, and I'll just read you this. He works for NBC, and Dan works for NBC, so they set that up so Dungy could go on his show and kind of explain himself. And it's, this is what happens at networks. Tony works for NBC, Dan does relationships, and it's also NBC right now is trying to put out the fire on Tony Dungy. And Dungy said, listen, I talked to some general managers. Dungy said regarding work that was done during the 2013 football season. And they said that Jonathan Martin definitely has the talent to play in this league, but would they want the distraction of everybody's following this story and asking over and over again, how's Jonathan Martin? What's going on with Jonathan Martin? Who's saying what to him? And because of that fact, they didn't view him as a difference maker. They probably wouldn't want the distraction. And I guess that's my point in the whole thing. If we substitute Jonathan Martin for Michael Sam and have the same quotes and the same comments,
nobody's going to replay those quotes 2 and 3 months later and try to say that there's any more to it than what was actually said. Dan asked Dungy about his position on Michael Vick. Vick had spent time in prison for dogfighting, a common comparison that has been made in the aftermath of Tony's remarks. Quote, people have to make their own decisions, and a lot of people made decisions they didn't want to accept Michael Vick. And in Philadelphia, had said the same thing to Michael Vick. I don't think we could have been mad. I wouldn't be mad. That's a decision that they made for their team. And I'm sure they had discussions about it, and that was my only point. And those things are discussed. And people asked my personal opinion, and I gave the gentleman my opinion. But it wasn't anything to attack Michael Sam, or it wasn't to come out the day before the report to camp and say he shouldn't be there. I don't believe that at all. I do believe he should be there, and I'm glad he is. Yes. Let me see if there's anything else here. He goes, I think people should recognize that when you go into coaching, you have a responsibility to deliver a good football team to your owner. So you're going to do everything you can to do that. So I would not, and I've said that many times and been on the record when asked about Michael Sam specifically. No, I wouldn't have a problem coaching him, and I would not have a problem with him being on a team. And you make those decisions based on what people bring to the table athletically and what they can do to make your team better. What Dungy reiterated yesterday was it's a distraction based on the media's coverage of it. 1-800-Flowers, Twitter feedback in a second. The Herd. We want things to be simple, right? Save time and money. That's the kind of stuff everybody can get behind. That's why many people are switching to Nature Box. They have revolutionized the way people are snacking, making delicious meals. I just had one this morning. They're wheat fig. It's unbelievable. Nature Box. Look it up. Features over 100 sweet, spicy, and savory snacks you won't find in stores. Hit naturebox.com/Colin. Select your choices. 50% off your first box, by the way, and free shipping. naturebox.com/Colin. Enter the promo code Colin. Got to go there, naturebox.com. They've got great snacks. They have these sprinkled almonds, these blueberry sprinkled almonds. They're fantastic. Ate a box of them yesterday. That was great for me. At least it's healthy. Good to have you in, Jay Billis. Last hour, Bob Stoops. Last hour as well on the Tony Dungy stuff. It is, you know, this is when you have a Michael Sam fluid social story. This is what comes from it. It gets talked about a lot. There's more media coverage. And it creates controversy, and the media ask questions, and they want a certain answer, and if you don't provide it, there's going to be criticism. So, one of the things that I just, like, I'm in the media, but there's a lot of times I don't agree with the media, that I think we can be too harsh sometimes. I think I'm less harsh today than I was 10 years ago. I just talk extemporaneously for hours and hours. One time I broke down my show just to figure out what it compared to if I was a sports writer. And basically my show is 28 columns every day. So if a columnist writes 2 columns a week, maybe 3, 12 a month, I do 28 columns a day. I do 5 days a week. So you can do the math pretty quickly. That's like 140 columns a week. I have bad segments. I have bad sentences. I have clunky moments. I'm not always right. I talk about all sorts of social situations. I really do like these sort of stories because I grow, you grow, we learn, I learn. And I think this situation, what's happening, we've seen it with our federal government, with our military, gay marriage. I think these are really important, captivating, fascinating, evolving topics. They're fluid. They're hot topics. You got to be careful what you say and who you judge and how you label. But I think in the media, we also have a responsibility at some point to not lash out to every single person that doesn't quite evolve at the same speed. But I understand there's media critics and there's networks now that are all right, all left. They take sides, they marginalize, they demonize. That's why I don't watch a lot of them. Now, I consider myself mostly a centrist. I have gay family members, gay friends, and I've get some emails this morning that are just appalling regarding gays. So there's bigotry everywhere. I think we should take a deep breath, be accepting of others, even if that doctrine we grew up with, the Bible, which I think should be used more metaphorically than verse for verse, word for word. But this is an important story, and it's an important story for growth for everybody and understanding and tolerance. So it's a teaching moment for everybody, myself included. I mean, I'm growing with the story. I don't have all the answers. I'm not necessarily right on stuff. Apparently, I riled up Bill Simmons about something. So Bill Simmons texted me and said, I want to come on the show. And when Bill beckons, we let him on the show. So, it's a lot of times it's NBA stuff, and I'm okay with that, too. Maybe it's Tony Dungy stuff. Maybe it's social stuff. I like that. So we have a really good next hour. I have Simmons, Jay Billis, and Bob Stoops. So I'm going to sit back and ask smart guys questions and let them go. Be honest with you, it's going to be a lazy last hour for me. I'm like, 3-second question, you do the talking. Seriously. I mean, literally, it's like having a driver to work. Yeah, I'll just sit back here, have a coffee. You got to read all the signs. So Simmons, Jay Billis, and Bob Stoops, and it should be fun. And if you want to see my NFL predictions, I want you to hold me to it. Go to ESPNradio.com, the Herd page. They're posted. Hold me to it. Copy them and rip me all year if I'm wrong. And I don't like the Cowboys at 5-11 much. I'll hear it from you, the Herd.
In the Herd.
There's a lot of lamenting, a lot of cliches thrown out there with college sports. College is all about business, making money, conference realignment. Nobody goes to class.
Take a deep breath.
Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, and Stanford, academic power, all one bowl game. As football gets more complex, it's the Herd on ESPN Radio, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Simulcast on ESPNU. Bill Simmons, Drew Brees was already on. Jay Billis in 15 minutes. Bob Stoops before the end of the hour. And Bill texted me this morning and wanted to be on, Bill Simmons. And so I'm going to bring him on. And it's the summer months right now. And I'm looking for interesting people and interesting topics, and I think Bill's both, so let's go. All right, first of all, let's just get this ridiculous thing out of the way. Your conspiracy theory about the Cavs trade for Kevin Love. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but you've earned the right to get one on the show. So, Bill Simmons, your conspiracy theory about the Cavs trading for Kevin Love, it's your dance floor.
It's late July. What else are we going to do but talk about weird things like conspiracy theories? I think this Kevin Love trade to Cleveland was already decided as part of the deal for LeBron to come back to Cleveland. I don't know this. I wouldn't bet my life on it. It's just like one of those weird gut feeling conspiracy theories.
Decided by who?
Well, you look at that letter he wrote, and he had at least 2 days to write that letter. I mean, you could talk about another conspiracy that they might have started working on that from that Sunday for that Friday.
You mean the
Who
LeBron
knows?
letter? The LeBron letter?
Yeah, they had at least 24 hours. He mentioned all the young players he was excited to play with. Wiggins and Bennett were conspicuously left out of that letter. And it jumped out at you the first moment you read it. You're like, why isn't Wiggins in that? Like, he's excited to play with Deion Waiters, but not Andrew Wiggins? That's weird. And then they said afterwards, it was an oversight. First of all, I don't believe in oversights when you're spending that much time writing a letter and mentioning young players from a team. And then also the fact that the two guys who were conspicuously left out of that letter are now the two guys involved in this, rumored, reported, negotiated Cavs-Timberwolves trade. It makes me think that deal was already kind of agreed on, and they didn't want they didn't want people to think that LeBron would only go back to Cleveland if they also traded for Kevin Love. It's a conspiracy theory, Colin.
No, you know what? I don't even think it rises to a conspiracy theory. I think you're probably right. I think that.
Oh, thanks.
No, I think in this instance, I think when LeBron met with Dan Gilbert for 4 hours, I don't. How long can you apologize? How long can you say I'm sorry? That's 12 minutes. You're not going to.
Well,
how long does?
And also, Gilbert played it perfectly because he did the whole. Listen, I feel terrible what happened, but you have to understand that letter was terrible for me. That was the worst night of my life. I hear about that letter every day. He flipped that around pretty quickly, and if they met for 4 hours, I bet the letter took up 10 minutes of that. And then from that point on, I wrote a column the day LeBron signed about that. I think he's, a basketball genius. I really do. I think he's somebody that his brain works differently than just about anybody that's ever played other than a handful of guys like Bird and Magic and Michael Jordan. And I think he looked at that Miami team. He looked at the way they played in those last 2 rounds, and he realized that he had no chance to win with that nucleus again.
Yeah, I agree, by the way. Yeah.
And once it became clear to him that they couldn't really improve the team in free agency, I think from the moment Jody Meeks signed for $19 million, that was it. He knew, and he wasn't staying because of Josh McRoberts and Danny Granger, washed up Danny Granger. So at that point, he started looking around. And I think he looked at that young Cleveland team. I don't think he knew he wanted to go back to Cleveland that soon. I think probably in his head he was like 2015, 2016. But once Miami lost the title and he had no chance for a three-peat, I think he started looking around, and Cleveland made a lot of sense from an asset standpoint.
Yeah.
I think this thing, I just feel like Kevin Love had to be part of this.
I absolutely agree. I think they sat down at dinner. And, fish, that's 12 minutes to eat, letters, 15. And you get down and you got 3.5 hours. And he said, listen, I'm not going to waste the next 4 years of my life in my prime. And I've got 4 years left on Andrew Wiggins. I love him. So I think you're absolutely right. And I don't
and also, the one other part of this, Wiggins and Kyrie, and people have done the good stats about this, about how neither of those guys are really good spot-up shooters. Wiggins shot 33% in the Summer League. Wiggins also young. Had 4 points in the last NCAA tournament game. You're counting on young guys in the playoffs, which is dangerous. Right, because you never know with young guys.
Golden State's great, but their young guys can't advance. You can't win. Yeah, so, okay.
Well, and then also, last thing, odometer for LeBron. 39,993 minutes already.
Yes.
Which you don't think of, but, man, 40,000 minutes is a lot of minutes. And I always felt like 50 is where the drop-off happens. Now, LeBron is superhuman. Who knows with that guy? He might blow out all the odometer things that we ever thought. But if you're operating under the theory that he has maybe 12,000 minutes left before he really passes his prime and goes to a different level, that gives him 3 years. So can he afford to wait for Andrew Wiggins to turn into? I don't think Cleveland should do anything until February. I want to see him with the young guys before I decide whether they should make a trade. And I think the Kevin Love trade's sitting there in February anyway.
What do you make of the fact that, and you grew up a diehard Red Sox fan, okay? So you're not baseball loathing guy. You're baseball loving guy. NBA free agency is significantly more relevant than baseball, don't you think?
I do. And I battle on this baseball thing because this is just like a gut feeling thing. It just feels less relevant than it used to be.
Oh, I totally agree.
But the ratings don't really reflect that. Like Sunday Night Baseball is up this year. The one thing that's really down is the Fox national game on Saturdays. That is way down. I mean, that has been cratering for the last couple of years. And I think what's happened with baseball is, and you and I have talked about this before, I think it's just a sport where you watch your own team. I don't think people are at home on a Saturday saying to themselves, oh, this is great. I get to watch the Cardinals and the Reds. You're not saying that if you live in Boston. You just want to watch the Red Sox.
When I was a kid, my favorite team was the Cincinnati Reds. My second favorite team was the Kansas City Royals. I grew up in Washington State. It doesn't work that way anymore. Listen, we all know the game. In our sphere, in our space, we want teams to be national. That's why in college football I cover Ohio State, Alabama, USC, and Oklahoma. There's just a very limited number in college basketball of national teams. Carolina, Duke, Kansas, Syracuse, Ohio State. Baseball's got like 2. The Yankees are national, and...
Well, I was going to say it's too long, and I mean, that's been talked about for 10 years, but it really stood out there in the World Cup. I thought... Chuck Klosterman talked about this on a podcast today, so I'm repeating a little bit. But 2 things stuck out about the World Cup. One was the time. Just 2 hours, you're out. And when it's extra time is an extra half hour, you're out. Either way, it's either 2 or 2.5 hours, you're out. And I think when you compare that to baseball, where you just don't know. Oh, you're 2.5 hours in, it's the 6th inning. I think that's the problem. The other thing is, baseball really became stat heavy. And I think it turned some people off because they felt like, I think it's an older generation. It's not my generation, but the older generation is like, I just want to watch the games. Do I have to memorize what everyone's stats are? Can I have an opinion that doesn't have to be backed up with 19 different stats? And I think with the World Cup, it was really stat-free. It was just like, hey, somebody either scored or they didn't. Somebody either had 30 saves or they had 8. Like, it was really simple, and I think people appreciated it.
I completely agree on this. I've been saying this. If I'm a kid, I'm 9 years old. If I join Little League, my dad's saying, all right, grip down, step here. Okay, get into the bat. When your dad goes to a soccer match, he doesn't understand half the rules. You just go play. You just go play, and Dad's not on your arse. Nobody's judging you. There's not a big failure moment striking out. You just go kick the ball around, and for young kids, it's easy. Dad's not on your back, and there's not that embarrassing moment in soccer.
The other thing with the NBA, I mean, this probably happened with the decision. So this is now that was 2010, so that's 11, 12, 13. So this is year 5 of this, where it's an 11-month sport. And only football really is an 11-month sport, but the difference between football and basketball is much more international than the NFL is, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But the NFL hasn't really trickled over to China and India and Africa and all these different places like the NBA is doing. The NBA is kind of poised for its position now to be the number 2 sport. Especially if this concussions thing keeps going. I'm not saying like tomorrow, but I think 20, 25 years from now, you can make a real case. And that's why this Donald Sterling thing is so fascinating because, it's in there's just so many good stories right now. And yet here's this one wart on everything, right? This guy that just won't go away. The situation now, we're within 3 months of the season. He's not going away. He's clearly poised to, he loves courtrooms. He loves being a martyr. He's not going away. He's going to sue. He's going to countersue. He's going to appeal. He's going to do everything he can to cause a ruckus. And at some point, Steve Ballmer is just going to say, screw this, and he's out. Another conspiracy theory that I don't think is even a conspiracy theory. This is clearly why the Lakers were waiting on not hiring a coach, because they must feel like they have a chance with Doc Rivers if this keeps dragging on.
I never thought about that. That's very
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a real thing. Like, why else wouldn't they have hired a coach? It's late July. Why don't they have a coach? Obviously, they're waiting on Doc Rivers, and that's a possibility. If you're Doc Rivers,
that's very,
yeah. And then what happens if Chris Paul says, hey, if this guy still owns the team on September 1st, I demand a trade? What happens if Blake Griffin says that? Like, this story's gonna take off, I think.
Yeah, but nothing against Ed Davis and Swaggy P. It'd be hard to move across the. I get Blake and Chris Paul, Ed Davis. That roster's ugly. That Laker roster.
Yeah, but he's in L.A. He's here anyway. He already bought his property and stuff. He loves living here. He always wanted to get here. You're the Laker coach. You're waiting out until 2016. All these free agents are coming. He has a good relationship with Kobe. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a good soft landing for him, I think.
By the way, I wish I had you for another half hour. Nothing against our advertisers, but sometimes I resent commercials because I would love to talk to you about Tony Dungy and all these things, but now I got Jay Billis. And I got...
Yeah, no. Talk to Jay Billis.
No, I will, but I'm interested in all this stuff. I love the Tony Dungy story because I grow, you grow, we all grow, and I think the collective in sports listenership can be knuckleheads sometimes, and I think it's a growing, evolving moment on stuff. And I like these topics, although a lot of people don't like them, and they think that they're too controversial, and we talk about religion. I think the Dungy thing is fascinating, and I think, by the way... Almost every team agreed with Tony Dungy. That's why everybody passed on Michael Sam 7 times, that some of these guys do see a bit of a distraction for a brief time.
Yeah, I heard what you said, and I agreed with it. I think when you're talking about a 6th-round pick or 7th-round pick that might not even make your team, we saw this happen with Tebow. It's like at some point the distraction effect outweighs any sort of benefit of what this guy can do for your team. And I think that was the point he was trying to make. I just think he made it really awkwardly, and it came off as insensitive. And, this whole story, I feel like religion, the people who are super religious, I still feel like there's a coming battle with this.
So do I.
I think those people are just kind of sitting tight and not saying anything. We have this whole side of the world where everybody's being so tolerant and everybody wants change, and they want people like Michael Sam and Jason Collins, and they want the heroes, and that's certainly the group I'm in. But I think there's this other demographic that's just not ready yet. And it hasn't totally seeped out yet, but I think it's going to. And I think this Tony Dungy thing, it wasn't the example I thought was going to happen, but it kind of tapped into where it's going to be a coach, it's going to be a player, it's going to be somebody, and they're going to play the Bible thing, and they're going to go really hard on it. And they're going to say, you can't tell me how to feel. And that's when this is going to get ugly, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hey, I really like this. Thanks for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure. Good luck with the summer.
Yeah,
I'll come on in a couple weeks.
Yeah, why don't you? Yeah, and by the way, I know when I'm on your podcast, nobody listens because I looked at the numbers and it was like 8 people. So I don't want to kill your business, but you're really busy. If you want me to, when I'm out in L.A., I can fill like 25, 30 minutes and we can just talk.
People loved our podcast. No, we did really well on that podcast.
Oh, did okay?
Yeah, we did really well.
Okay, I didn't know because I looked at it one day and I'm like, yeah, I thought it was.
No, we did really well.
All right, Bill, good talking to you.
Take care, Colin.
All right. Yeah. All right, Jay Billis around the corner. In your everyday life, you sometimes find yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. But when you're wearing Hanes T-shirts, underwear, and socks, they've got this new revolutionary X-Temp technology, so your stuff can be cool. You know what I'm saying? It responds to your body temperature, and it responds to speed evaporation, so you're dry and comfortable. And those moments happen to all of us when we're, uncomfortable, and the Hanes X-Temp technology is there in those moments. So whether you forgot to hit the mute button in that meeting, you're reaching your 16-year-old to drive, you want to keep your cool, right? Hanes X-Temp technology, because when you're cool, you are comfortable. Hanes, Jay Billis next. By the way, I often say on the show, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right. And there are issues that I've, through the years, done a 180 on. People say 360, but it's actually a 180. And I'm not quite in the 180 camp, but one of the issues over the last, I would say, 8 to 12 months, 9 to 12 months that I have not only softened, but because of increased revenue streams, I think differently today, is a stipend for some college athletes. I really had an epiphany about 2 months ago when I was thumbing through the internet and I saw a school I'm familiar with, Washington State, and they had like a $300 million football facility. And I know the trouble they had raising money forever. I know it well. And I made a couple calls, and we're to a point now in college sports, especially college football. There are these revenue streams. It's just another $50 million to a conference. I read a story this weekend. Every conference is getting another $50 million based on some digital Final Four playoff. So I've come to the point where it is time to give stipends for players. And I didn't feel that a year and a half ago. But we didn't have all these new networks, and Jay Billis is joining us. So I'm converting to your side on this, is that there is a stipend payment thing coming. Do you believe everybody should get paid?
Well, Colin, I believe, and I've said forever, that I think all the handcuffs should be taken off and schools should be allowed to provide whatever they want, just like they do with everybody else, including every other student. There's no restriction as to what a school can provide to any other student. The only one that's restricted and restricted industry-wide by a cartel restriction is on the athlete. And so I would say provide whatever you want. If you don't want to get, just like they do with scholarships. They don't have to give scholarships, but they do. And that's the market they're in. And, just so we're clear, I mean, if we operated this business like our rhetoric, sort of the NCAA's rhetoric, where they make it sound like this is Little League for education only, I'd be fine with it. If the salaries were in line with what they pay educators, I'd be fine with it. But they don't do that. Everything is big business, professional sports, except for the athlete. And every sacrifice is asked to be made by the athlete. In other words, when we say, hey, boy, we give this athlete, Bob Bowlesby says, we're going to give these athletes a stipend, and when we do, my biggest fear is all these non-Olympic all these Olympic sports for men are going to go away. Well, when we pay a coach $8 million or an offensive coordinator $1.5 million, we don't lament wrestling going away. That's only when we give the athlete more. And I don't think that's right. And I think, in fact, when we're making this kind of money and engaging in this kind of activity, to say that the athlete is the only one that can't share in this by rule and by cartel rule, I think that's wrong to the point of being immoral.
Top of your head, what kind of stipend are we talking about? Gut feeling. $2,000 a week, $2,000 a month? What do you think?
And I think it'll come out to what they're going to refer to as cost of attendance. So it'll be in the $2,000 to $5,000 range to get everybody up to what it costs to go to that school. And then the next complaint you'll hear is schools are messing with the accounting to be able to provide more for a recruiting advantage. And so that'll be the next fight that they have. But this is just a stopgap. We didn't hear this 10 years ago. Everybody's saying, hey, we've wanted to do this forever. That's not true. They haven't wanted to do this forever. They're doing this because they're being made to do it, and it's a stopgap in between having to provide even more to the players because everybody else is getting more. And so the tension, as you referred to, I think that's what you're referring to, that the tension between the professional enterprise this is and the fact that the players essentially only get their expenses, and the expenses they get, the scholarship is paid. It's an expense item that the school pays to itself. It's just really a money transfer from one bank account at the school to another one. So that tension is going to continue to grow because, as you mentioned, the money's growing. Just for example, the Big Ten payout, I think now per school is about $22 million. In the next 4 years, I believe, it's projected to be over $40 million a year per school.
Yes.
And then you'll hear these commissioners with a straight face say, hey, we don't have enough money, all these sports are going to go away. So you're doubling your revenue and all these sports are going to go away. But when they're paying each other, when they're getting all their gigantic salaries, nobody says, hey, I'm really worried about wrestling because we're paying 6 baseball coaches in the Southeastern Conference are making over $1 million a year. I'm worried about wrestling going away. That doesn't pass the last test.
Are you proud of me for evolving on this, Jay?
You're getting there, Colin. I mean, it's amazing. It's taken a long time, a lot of beating our heads against the wall. But you're getting there. I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, once I saw Washington State with $1 zillion facility, I thought, all right, gloves are off. This is ridiculous. Pay players. The story about cheating in college athletics, and I said it's similar to cheating on taxes. With federal budget cuts, there's less audits this year. I just read this in the Wall Street Journal. If you're unethical, there's nothing we can do about it. You'll always be able to cheat in this society. Is the cheating worse today? Couldn't I argue the transparency of social media has created less cheating?
Yes, and I think that's probably right. And I think you heard Nick Saban say that the other day. I think that's true. I think it's harder to cheat now than it's ever been. We're talking about different levels of cheating. The only cheating that anybody really worries about is cheating that's going to give an advantage in procuring talent so that they can win more. Nobody's worried about some of this other stuff. But this is all coming from the Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby's comments the other day, and his comments were aimed more at the NCAA and aimed specifically at the leadership of Mark Emmert, the NCAA president, because, enforcement's in his office, and it's right down the hallway, and it has become a hot mess. I think the enforcement process has always been broken because it's always been unfair. It always pits the institution against the coaches, the administrators, and the players, and the system, I think, promotes the institution throwing everybody under the bus in order to save itself. And you've got a system where they're, rules maker, investigator, policeman, judge, jury, and executioner all in the same body. That doesn't promote trustworthiness. And frankly, enforcement has been proven to have been behaving in an unethical manner, and we haven't had consistent results. So that's really what Bowlesby, in my judgment, was saying. I think he's right, but I don't think it means that there's chaos in the streets, dogs and cats living together, and all of a sudden the system is going to spin off into this horrible place.
Jay Billis with the ever-evolving and affable Herd. Thank you for enlightening us, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Always a pleasure, Colin. Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. I'm not a big believer in digging your feet into the sand, and I think it's okay sometimes to say, I've just changed my opinion on something. And I still believe that I don't like the inflammatory language that it was comparable to slavery. I think it's too flammable, too incendiary. I don't like this extortion. I mean, extort my kids to Stanford, please. But I do think we've reached the point with these revenue streams over the last 18 months to 2 years. These conferences now, you go look at the Pac-12, everybody's got a new $200 million facility. Everybody. Baseball coaches making $1 million. You can't funnel $800 a month to a running back. So it's one of these. It's not a right or wrong. It's just things have changed, and I'm going to change with it. I still don't think college is there to make you rich, but I think you can now be enriched to some degree through a stipend. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive save an average of 500 bones. Call or click today. Subway gift cards for college athletes. Did I just do a Ron Burgundy and just read what was on the screen and I'm not supposed to? I think I did. Yeah, I think I just read something that really wasn't supposed to be read. Bob Stoops before the end of the show. It's the Herd. And a final word on the Tony Dungy thing. Like media kind of fell into two camps. They thought what Tony Dungy said was outrageous and he should be canned and he's an absolute bigot. Or they were in my camp, which is this social stuff is clunky. A lot of teams passed on Michael Sam. They all passed on him primarily because he's good enough to play in the NFL. They passed on him because is his talent worth this media storm? And even the fact that Tony Dungy's comments have created a media storm somewhat validates what Tony is saying is, a lot of people converge on this stuff, and the media is a heat-seeking missile seeking headlines. So, my thing is social commentary can be clunky. If you're not reading a press release, I don't think Tony Dungy's a bad guy. And I believe this situation will resolve itself quickly. Players will get over it. But as Bill Maher said about Don Jones of the Dolphins, he's a 24-year-old kid. How dumb were we all at 24? Add football. And that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and 52% of California have evolved or struggled or dealt or discussed gay marriage. And this is an issue that's fluid and people are discussing it. And now you're saying, well, Tony Dungy's a 50-year-old man. He should know better. He is also a Christian conservative, and that doctrine is rigid when it comes to a man and a woman marrying. So I didn't grow up with that. I mean, you're in two camps with the media. Dungy's bad and a bigot, or this is a story that NFL teams are all dealing with, and many did what Tony said. Marginal player, kind of a distraction with the media, let's pass. Clearly, that's what 31 of 32 teams did. The only one that didn't was the Rams with their last pick. So I thought he was voicing an opinion that was voiced behind closed doors, and he just came out and said it. And a lot of people in the media are, the media ask questions, and sometimes they just want one answer. So just because I don't agree with Tony Dungy doesn't mean Tony Dungy, to me, should be labeled a bigot or insensitive. If you really read his quotes, what he is saying is what the 32 general managers in the NFL discussed. But maybe I'm wrong on that. NFL training camps, by the way, all underway today. SportsCenter's live at the Cowboys camp. Oh, this just in. Vernon Davis. Yes. Hi, it's topical. Breaking news. Vernon Davis's holdout for the Niners over before it started. Vernon Davis did stay away from the Niners' voluntary offseason sessions. Held out on the mandatory minicamp last month. But there's just been a video posted of the 49ers teammates celebrating Vernon Davis's return to the team in the locker room. So he's great, and he helps them. There's Bob Stoops. Haven't seen Bob in a year. All right. This has been a good hour for me. Jay Billis, Bill Simmons, Bob Stoops. I've just asked questions and let them talk. This has been, it's like they're my personal drivers to work. I don't do anything this hour. Smart guys, here's a question. You finish the sentence. It's the best. If you could do this every day. Do you have tax problems? Community Tax solves those tax problems. Do you owe back taxes? Are you being audited? Yikes. Maybe you have several years of unfiled returns. Whatever your tax-related issue may be, the pros at Community Tax can help. The number is 888-989-8647. 888-989-8647. It can be even easier to just go to communitytax.com. Okay, they deal directly every day with the IRS for you. They're professionals, experts at dealing with the enormous bureaucracy that is the IRS. They've done it every day for years. Thousands of satisfied clients. Okay, you don't probably want to deal with the IRS yourself. Okay, they're not there to help you. They're there to get your money. The good folks at Community Tax are there to help you. 888-989-8647. Community Tax solves tax problems. It's the Herd. Envy is an ugly thing, and it's usually misdirected. You don't hate the rich and powerful. You want to be rich and powerful. It's why you go on tours to see where they live. You see envy in sports, too. I hate the Yankees. I hate the Lakers and LeBron. Once again, misdirected. Money and glamour don't solve problems in life or in sports. Look around sports today. We've got a college football dynasty in Tuscaloosa. Is that a rich place? We have a college basketball juggernaut in Lexington, Kentucky. Neither New York team made the NFL playoffs, but small market Green Bay, Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Indianapolis did. The big city Mets and Red Sox, Phillies rebuilding. Never seemed to be rebuilding in St. Louis. The Lakers are rich and glamorous and a dumpster fire. Money and glamour don't buy commitment, work ethic, strategy, discipline, and execution. I'd argue they often get in the way of it.
Colin Cowherd, weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on ESPN Radio and ESPNRadio.com.
Hi, this is ESPN Rochester's Gene Battaglia. Sports Trivia Champs has a new night, Wednesdays at 8. Come see your favorite bartenders, Katie and Lynn, for Wind Down Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, all Constellation brand glasses are only $4. Yingling drafts, only $2.50 on Wednesdays. Plus, we'll watch whatever's on. The Yankees, Sox, every game is on at Champs. It is a lot of fun. We have a blast. Hope you can join us. Wednesday night at 8, Sports Trivia Champs. Champs, Eastview Mall.
There's just one place where students are students first, and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. That place is your local high school. High school sports offer more than the joy of competition. Studies show that student athletes in New York are also likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in other areas of their lives, including academics. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the New York State Public High School Athletic Association and the New York State Athletic Administrators Association.
Get your sports fix here. Talking sports all the time. The sports leader, AM 950 and 95.7 ESPN.
All guests on the herd appear via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline.
Well, I only get them once a year, and I'd love to see you, Bob Stoops. By the way, I got you this year. 7 of the last 8 years I've been right. I have you and Auburn in the national title game.
7 of the last 8 years you've been right?
Yeah, well, not necessarily with a score, but I've gotten one of the two teams right. I have Florida State actually making the 4, but getting knocked out.
Well, I hope it's 8 of the last 9 then. I hope you're right.
You know, it's interesting. You got at West Virginia, now they're in your conference. Tennessee out of conference, at Tulsa. Tulsa's a pretty good football team now. You know, I look, and you've never shied away from this. You don't have to play those teams. You got home and homes with Michigan, Ohio State coming up. You've played Notre Dame. You don't have to play those teams. You've never had to play those teams. And, you know, one of the things you've said through the year, and you play 9 conference games now.
Right.
Right. So I look at your schedule, and I think, that's pretty tough. You got like 7, 8 losable games. Does it bother you when you look at Texas A&M's schedule? You got Lamar in there. Some of those SEC teams out of conference.
It's pretty, they're not real strong. And you're only playing 8 conference games. And, you know, so I think you're right at the end of the day. And let's face it. I mean, you know, there's part of that league hasn't been beating everybody. So at the end of the day, you know, non-conference schedule should matter. That's the only reason we have scheduled in a tough way. We just got off the last 4 years of home and home with Notre Dame and Florida State. Our next 4 years are Tennessee and Ohio State.
And let me just say this. You play 9 conference games like the Pac-12.
That's right.
And I've said this to Nick. Nick voted for it. Nick said, let's play more conference games. But most of those guys kind of back up to this, well, hey, our conference is strong. Well, the truth is they're uneven schedules. So Alabama hasn't had to play Florida and South Carolina in recent years.
Exactly. There's a lot of give and take in those leagues with 14 teams. They're not all doing well. And I'm not calling on any particular conference. The bottom line is all 14 aren't doing real well.
By the way,
there's some of them you wouldn't mind playing. So at the end of the day, that's the truth. So that's just how it is. And you know what? And that's in every league. Some aren't doing so well. The top parts of every league are pretty good, darn good. And that's the truth in every league.
You recruit California pretty well. I follow recruiting closely. And you gone out to California. You stole the best running back on the entire West Coast last year, Mixon. Tight ends, wide receivers. I always think Oklahoma is Texas country. and the South. And why the shift to California? Because you've been stealing good players.
You know, we've always done fairly well in California. And, you know, there's direct flights, you know, from L.A. To Oklahoma City. And that's you know, with today's world, that's a pretty good deal. And we've always done well. We you know, for whatever reason, of course, all the tradition, the winning, the success, you know, players see it. And they want to be in those kind of big games and in television games and in the non-conference schedule we talk about. And so anyway, so it's part of we've done really well out there for a good number of years.
Yeah, it's interesting because you wouldn't think L.A. kid go to Oklahoma, but you have gotten elite players, like not guys that you wrestled them out of USC and UCLA and like that running back you just got. You can
Joe Mixon is a great player, a fabulous player, and he's had a great summer. And
can he start for you?
Oh, absolutely. He'll have a chance to.
He's unbelievable. On film, unbelievable.
And we've got other talented guys, but he's been everything that we hoped he'd be on campus already.
I don't think anybody's going to go undefeated this year. I don't think it's possible. I think we're unrealistic. Conference championships, rivalries,
tough.
I don't think you can do it. When you look at your schedule, and I see some games here, how do you every week? 19-year-old kids.
It's hard.
How do you ramp them up?
It is hard. You can't. There's no. If you're counting on a particular speech to get a 19, 20-year-old ready to play for 14 weeks, that's not happening. At the end of the day, it's having some maturity and responsibility as individuals, as young people, to be prepared. And every guy's different. If some guys, it takes them to get mad on Thursday. Some guys can get mad an hour before they get on the bus.
Sure.
Some guys get mad 10 minutes before they play.
But you have teams show up sometimes, Bob. It's nothing against Bob Stoops. They're not ready to go.
You know, it happens to everybody, you know, at different times. And you know, fortunately for us, it hasn't happened a lot. Sometimes it isn't your day. It isn't because of that. The other team's performing well. You didn't, you know, you missed a throw. You missed a play. Sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot for, you know, to be on the wrong end of it. But
by the way, in the NFL, if you lose a game, we understand that. But you college coaches lose a game, and you're all idiots. I mean, the fans have to kind of understand here. 85 scholarships, there's more good quarterbacks everywhere in America now.
Yeah.
Everybody can play. Tulsa can go up against you, spread the football, no huddle. You're not ready. They have mismatch and beat you.
There's more players everywhere anymore. There's no question. And if you don't have players, it's your fault. In that, meaning there's players everywhere. You know? Okay,
stipends are coming in college football probably. Players are probably going to get a little stipend. There's too much money funneling in. I was never a pay-the-player guy, but I see Washington State building a $200 million facility. I think they can now afford $800 for a running back. Are you comfortable with it?
I am for cost of attendance, and not just for football, for all athletes. Women's athletics as well as all the other men's sports. I think it needs to be everybody. And for cost of attendance, whether it's travel, home and back on, on certain breaks, things like that, I think are all positive. But enough isn't said of how we are reinvesting in our players. When you look at our nutrition, we just built a $75 million dormitory for our student athletes. And that isn't just Oklahoma. Around the country, we do invest in our players, in their environment and everything that they interact with on a daily basis. We're always trying to improve.
Yeah, and it should also be noted that it's not like when you recruit a player and he underachieves and he's not very good, you kick him out. I mean, he still gets his degree at Oklahoma. Exactly. He still gets fed, still gets the education.
That's right. And, some people say, well, the guys, all these 14 jerseys with Sam Bradford jerseys that we're selling. Well, Josh Heupel also wore that number. Are they buying it because of Josh Heupel or him? Or if Sam Bradford played at East Lamar State, would they still be? Our people are going to buy that jersey for somebody because it's Oklahoma.
Sure.
Not just because it's him.
Yeah.
So that isn't talked about a lot either. It's the brand is Oklahoma too.
Yes,
and that has value.
No, college is different. College football, the brand and the coach trump the player. And almost now there are these transcendent Johnny Manziel guys, Reggie
Adrian
Bush.
Peterson.
There's occasionally you get those guys. Okay, we're out of time. Great seeing you, Bob.
Great, Colin. Good to be with you.
Got him in the national title game this year. I got Oklahoma and Auburn in the national championship game. Florida State will make the Final Four, and I'm not sure about that fourth team. Probably comes from the Pac-12, which is deeper than it's been in a long time. 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed. We'll see you tomorrow. TuneIn Radio app. You can find us there as well. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio.